Welcome to Big Muddy Mayhem, the podcast where we talk about true crime and bad behavior in the Midwest.
Each week, we'll bring you 2 stories from the heartland that might break your heart, but we hope to entertain you along the way.
I'm Janet O'Brien.
I'm Tracey Laricha.
Hello!
Hello there, Janet. How are you?
Good.
Wonderful. It has been a beautiful, happy first day of spring.
Happy first day of spring. It's been super sunny but cold, which you expect from spring.
Yeah, a little bit windy today, but honestly, really nice. I haven't had to pull out my heavy coat in a while, and I am here for it.
Right. I mean, I had my coat, but I didn't even drive to work with it. I didn't drive to here with it. I was like, I'll just put it on for a second.
Yeah.
So
nice.
It's definitely, the weather's getting better.
Fantastic. Well, it is springtime.
It is.
Seasons, they are a-changing.
Yeah, and there was tornadoes.
There were tornadoes. There are fire warnings here. There were blizzards. Who the heck knows what's going on in the Midwest right now, right?
Right. I mean, how many confirmed tornadoes did we have over the last weekend?
Oh, I don't...
in the St. Louis area?
Something like that?
It was 9.
Oh, more than... Okay.
Yeah, the number just keeps going up.
Yeah,
So...
Alrighty, but we're here today, and we have stories for you.
We have stories.
Okay. And I think that it is your turn to read first here.
I am first.
All right.
I did not check to see if we had done this before, but I don't believe we have. So
okay.
Hopefully you don't look at me and stop
We don't have another Rita Crundwell on our hands.
Things like that. So, have you heard of Frank Abagnale?
Frank Abagnale.
Yeah, Abagnale.
It isn't ringing a bell.
Okay. Well, let me tell you about him.
All right. Well, let's talk about it.
And he was born April 27th, 1948. The only reason why most of this is not going to be in the Midwest, but he just happens to be in Baton Rouge for 5 seconds. So I'm like, you know what? That's good enough for me.
Okay.
So it's a good story. So he's born April 27th, 1948 in the Bronx in New York.
Okay.
His parents, they were separated when he was 12 years old, and they ended up getting a divorce when he was 15.
Mm-hmm.
After the divorce, he ended up moving in with his father and his new stepmother in Mount Vernon, New York. So I assume that's upstate New York.
Right. Okay, that's where Washington was from.
Right,
yeah.
Exactly. Now, I did not
read... Right, or am I... No, he was a Virginian, Mount Vernon. There's Mount Vernons in pretty much every state.
This Mount Vernon is in New York.
Okay.
So at age 15, his father gave him a truck and a gasoline credit card.
Okay.
Should never give a 15-year-old unless you absolutely trust them a credit card.
Janet, I have to stop you right here. My parents ran their own company that involved a company fleet of vehicles that went out. So I did have a gasoline credit card as a teenager. And I did have a gasoline credit card as a teenager, and I had memorized all of the locations of every Texaco in the St. Louis area where I could buy snacks.
Probably cigarettes.
Yeah. And, also, he would barter, okay, well... I will, we'll go to the Texaco and I can get, you a couple of packs of... I didn't smoke, but I could buy a couple of packs of cigarettes. And then my friend would, buy my fries or my moons over my hammy or whatever at Denny's. So, yes, you are absolutely correct. You should never give a teenager an unmonitored...
credit card
to a gas station.
Yeah. So, he ends up putting about $3,400 on the credit card.
I was not that bad.
And that would equal, in 1963, which is worth about $35,000 today.
I was nowhere near that bad.
Right?
Yes, I mean, just, geez, like the occasional pack of pizzeria pretzels, or like, or what is it, the pizzeria combos.
Right. You couldn't add up $35,000 within a month or two.
I would have had to try very, very hard. Harder than I would. Like, kind of like, did you ever see Reality Bites?
No,
The
I know
movie?
about it.
But yeah, there's a whole scene where, like, her dad gives her a car for graduation and then a gas card. And so she ends up making a whole lot of money by just, like, standing at the gas station and being like, you getting gas? You paying cash? So I would have had to pull off some kind of, one of those kind of gambits to run up a bill that big. But I did not. So anyway, but he did.
Yeah.
So
well, he ended up getting sent to reform school in
on what grounds?
in Westchester County, New York, run by the Catholic Charities. He claims he did claim at this point he had gone to an elite private school until 10th grade in New York, Iona Preparatory School. But unfortunately, there are no photos that can be found of him, and no alumni actually remember him.
It is theoretically kind of an elite school. I mean, reformatory school, it is elite.
Exactly.
In that not everybody ends up there, right?
Right.
Oh, goodness.
So, December of 1964, he enlists in the Navy at the age of 16.
Mm-hmm.
He ends up being discharged less than 3 months later in February of 1965. 2 weeks later, he was arrested for petty larceny in Mount Vernon, New York, on February 26, 1965.
Okay.
Larceny is theft of property or money under a certain value. So under $1,000.
Right, exactly. So, yeah, theft, but theft with a dollar amount attached.
Exactly. So March of 1965, he identifies himself as a Scarsdale, New York police officer, and he enters an apartment in Mount Vernon, New York, claiming to investigate their teenage daughter.
Oh.
It's just like, what?
There's nothing weird about that.
So the people who lived in that house, they end up calling the actual police, and the police show up and they find out that he has a toy gun and a paper police badge. He's arrested and booked on vagrancy. Vagrancy is a condition of homelessness without employment or income.
The full-on stones of showing up with a paper badge and a toy gun. Like, my goodness. Well, I hope he got some candy, right?
He ends up getting committed to the Grassland Psychiatric Institute for observation.
Okay.
June of 1965, the FBI arrests him in Eureka, California for car theft.
Okay.
He stole a car from one of his father's neighbors in New York, a Ford Mustang. Mm-hmm. His picture ended up in the newspaper, a local newspaper in California, with him sitting, it doesn't say if it was that actual Mustang, but behind the wheel of some car while the FBI is questioning him.
I'm just picturing him with like a ring full of those big plastic keys like you give toddlers to chew on. Like,
no.
Vroom, vroom. I go. Beep, beep, beep. I go.
He did a cross-country trip, financing it with blank checks stolen from a family business from the Bronx.
Oh, dear.
He was also charged with impersonating a U.S. Customs official, but apparently the charges were eventually dropped. Doesn't say where that came from. He was released into his father's custody to face charges for the stolen car.
Okay.
At this age, he is 17.
Oh, my gosh.
So he is already...
He's fit quite a bit into his young life, right?
Yeah. So he's back under his father's care, and then he decides he's going to now start impersonating a pilot by acquiring a uniform from the Manhattan Uniform Company with the money he got from the stolen checks.
Isn't he a little bit young to be impersonating a pilot?
He's 17.
Okay there, Doogie Flyer, whatever.
July 7th, 1965, he told the media, the local media, that he was a graduate of the American Airlines Pilot School in Fort Worth, Texas.
Okay.
Days later, he was arrested in Tuckahoe, New York, for the stolen checks. He ends up getting sentenced to 3 years at the Great Meadow Prison in New York for the checks, but after serving 2 years, they released him in custody to his mother now.
Okay.
He ends up immediately breaking his terms of the parole with a stolen car conviction in Boston.
Oh no!
And he's returned back to the prison to serve his last year.
Oh wow! Okay. Have his parents given up on him by this point? Do we know anything about what?
No, just they're trying, but
they're just what are you gonna do?
Right. On Christmas Eve, December 20th, 1968, he's now 20.
Okay.
He disguises himself as a TWA pilot,
dear.
He moves to Baton Rouge.
Okay.
When he's there, he ends up becoming friends with a local minister. He tells the minister, I have a master's degree in social work, and I'm really trying to I want to get a job here in Baton Rouge at Ithaca to work with kids with disabilities.
Right, okay.
Because I have a degree I have a social work degree from Ithaca College in New York.
Okay, right. Yes, he was going to go help children, but they needed him to come help fly planes. You just have to... Janet, sometimes you just have to bloom where you're planted. I'm just saying.
The minister ends up introducing him to the faculty at the Louisiana State University because he wants to work with children, and they immediately could tell it was a fraud. He told them that he was a forlorn TWA pilot. They called the airline.
And TWA says,
who?
He doesn't even go here.
Right. The minister ends up calling the police, and he's arrested on February 14th, 1969, on vagrancy charges again.
Ooh.
After the arrest, they find out that he had illegally driven his rental car from Florida out of state.
Oh dear, okay.
So that's how he got to Louisiana.
Well, he should have just flown.
They also find out that he had stolen blank checks from his host family in Baton Rouge and also from a local business in Baton Rouge.
Oh my.
He was charged and unable to make bail. So on June 2nd, 1969, he is sentenced to 12 years supervised probation.
12 years seems like a long time to be on probation. To me, if we need to keep an eye on you for 12 years, you maybe need to just
not be in jail.
Yeah, be somewhere where you can.
So what does he do?
Think about it.
He flees to Europe.
Flees to Europe. Okay, well, he's kind of used up everything in the U.S. Might as well.
Right.
So
what do you think happens in Europe?
He doubles down and pretends to be something else. Maybe he says he's a count or a pilot or...
2 weeks later, after being there, he's arrested in Montpellier, France, September of 1969. He stole a car, and he defrauded 2 local families in Sweden.
Oh, my goodness. And I guess none of them had, planes readily available or whatnot.
Pilots, whatever.
Sure.
He ends up serving 3 months in prison in France, and then they send him to Sweden, where he serves another 2 months. And then he is banned. He's banned from Sweden for the next 8 years and ordered to pay back the people he frauded in Sweden.
Okay, he got kicked out of Sweden.
Yes.
Essentially.
Exactly.
Now, what about France? France is we do not like you, but we will take you.
I guess so.
You can come
back.
He
stole a car.
You can go back, but we know who you are. Sorry, that was my terrible French accent.
He ends up getting deported back to the U.S. June of 1970, where one of his appeals, it doesn't say for which one because there's multiple things, one of his appeals fails. Mm-hmm. Once he's returned, 22-year-old Frank,
oh my gosh,
dressed in a pilot's uniform,
oh good word,
traveled around to college campuses passing bad checks and claiming he was there to recruit stewardesses for Pan Am.
And what year is this again?
This is 1970.
Oh, so he's trying to hire stewardesses in 1970, which basically just means
go pick up the hot girls.
He's on the make. Yeah, like he's on the make. There were very specific rules about who could be the hostesses of the sky back then.
They couldn't be married.
They had to be like a certain height, a certain weight, you know, and some of that has to do with the plane, but not all of it had to do with the plane back then.
At the University of Arizona, he claimed to be a doctor and a pilot. And of course...
Paging Dr. Airplane. Dr. Airplane.
So he had to conduct physical exams on several female students so they could become stewardess.
Oh my God.
I know!
Oh.
It's just like, what? They don't say what he did. But... I'm sure he saw them naked.
You know, there was part of me that was just kind of like...
What are you doing?
This guy is just sort of like... There's kind of... When you get a scamp or a rapscallion like this, there's a little bit of you that kind of almost sort of roots for them as long as they're not really hurting anybody. Now this is just Donald Trump in the Miss America Junior pageant locker room, and it's gross.
Yeah.
I'm not for him anymore.
So he ends up he cashes a personal check that was made to look like a Pan Am paycheck on July 30th, 1970. The FBI took notice. So they end up arresting him on the day I was born.
Oh, hey,
November 2nd,
I'm sorry, the sound blew out there just a little bit. November 2nd.
So he was born on the day I was born. I mean, he was arrested on the day I was born.
On the day you were born.
And they find out that he had actually cashed 10 of these checks, trying to pass them off as paychecks.
How many of them did you sign? Janet, I'm just saying, like, one of you has an alibi, and I bet it's not you.
He ends up escaping. So he goes to jail. And then he escapes the Cobb County Jail. Okay. But he ends up getting caught 4 days later in New York. Okay. 1971, they sentence him to 10 years for forging checks in a total of $1,448, which would be about $11,000 today.
So much less than what he has kind of actually gotten away with over the years.
He receives 2 more years for escaping jail.
Right.
1974, after only serving 2 years, he's released on parole.
Oh my gosh.
He tried to work, but apparently everywhere he worked, he would get fired because they would find out about his shady past.
Oh, okay, so he's trying to go straight.
Right. But then in 1974, he poses as a pilot once again to get a job at a children's summer camp in Texas. I don't understand the connection of that, because he does this more than once. Why? Where he's like, I want to work with children. I'm a pilot, but I want to work with children. I'm like, what does that mean?
Okay, I mean, you could see it if it was in the terms of, like, medical transport and stuff like that, but I'm like, what the hell kind of summer camp was this?
I don't know. But, of course, he ends up getting arrested from that summer camp because he got caught stealing cameras from coworkers.
Okay, cameras?
Cameras.
Like, you couldn't just have...
I don't know. He then does also get hired. He gets hired at an orphanage, but immediately the probation officer is like, no, you can't work there. You're pretending to be a pilot again. Stop that. Gets yanked from the orphanage. The parole officer is sick of it. So he moves Frank above his own garage to keep an eye on him.
You could do... What year is this?
This is 1974. So the parole
when you're
officer,
just like, oh my God.
I cannot keep tabs of you.
So you just bring him home and move him into your house?
Well, like, on the garage, you know.
Like above the garage? Oh, sure, yeah. Like where he's not nice and supervised or anything. But you can just bring him home like you work at a shelter and this is the one dog that can't get adopted?
I know.
What What is going on here?
He gets hired by Aetna, but of course they fire and sue him for check fraud.
Okay.
So he's having a rough time.
Oof.
Finally, in 1975, he ends up going inside a bank and he says, I have an offer for you. He goes, he tells the bank, listen, I have done all of these scams with banks and checks for years. He goes, I want to show you how paper hangers, I didn't know what paper hanger was. Apparently it's a person who does a lot of check fraud.
Okay.
Uses to defraud banks.
That's really smart.
And he goes, if they didn't learn anything from him, they don't have to pay him anything. If they do, just give him $50. He'll just talk them through a little thing. And this
That's a remarkably low ask, and it makes me question his motives, Janet.
I think it's just for him to get his foot in the door.
Okay.
And then this starts his career as a speaker and a security consultant.
Okay.
During this time, he falsified on his resume, of course, because, I'm sure this is like one of those, he couldn't quit cold turkey. He's trying. But of course he had to put on his resume, I worked with the LA Police Department and the Scotland Yard doing the same thing. And
I guess technically some of those things are tangentially true, and that he was perhaps associated with those organizations, but...
In 1977, he starts giving public talks. During his talks, he claims between the ages of 16 and 21, he pretended to be a pediatrician. He acted as a pediatrician for a year in Georgia.
Oh, God.
He worked as an assistant attorney general for a year. He worked as a sociology professor for 2 semesters, and he was a Pan Am pilot for 2 years. We can't confirm or deny either of those things.
If he had just put half of the amount of time that he spent pretending into actually trying to become one of these things, he probably could have very easily done it.
Right. He moves, and at this point, he ends up moving in after 1977 with his wife, Kelly, in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And they live in their home and raise 3 boys for 25 years.
Oh my gosh, how much does she know?
She knows everything.
And she's just, stand by your man.
They have 3 kids. Then after their kids move out and go to college, they end up deciding, you know what, let's move to Charleston, South Carolina. So they go there.
He's like, great choice, I'm the mayor there.
Now, when they were still in Oklahoma, they ended up founding the Abagnale and Associates, which it's a company that advises companies on secure documents.
Okay.
In 2015, his company is named by the AARP as the Fraud Watch Ambassador.
I think I've heard of Abagnale before, yes.
They provide online programs and community forums to educate consumers about ways to protect themselves from identity theft and cybercrime.
Well, who better to know?
He knows all the back things. 2018, he started co-hosting with AARP again, a podcast called The Perfect Storm.
And it's all about...
The Perfect Scam, I'm sorry.
The Perfect Scam. So it's all about just all the ways that he did these things.
Yeah, and he's trying to teach...
How to not get caught by someone like me.
Right, exactly.
Wow.
He's been on The Tonight Show, and he's been on some other TV shows. They ended up writing a book about him, and the book is called... Catch Me If You Can.
I heard about that. Now, it turned into a movie. I have not seen it, but I have heard of it, and I always thought it was an interesting...
Yeah, it was a movie produced by Steven Spielberg. He ended up actually making a cameo in that movie as a French police officer.
Oh, I wish it were a pilot. It should have just been like Snoop Dogg and Soul Plane, where they just cut to it, and you're like...
But he said that the reason why for this big change was because he met his wife.
Oh.
She was like, okay, I gotta stop. But I mean, he took what he knew, what he was obviously really good at, and turned it into his own business to stop people from doing that.
Confidence will get you anywhere, and the love of a good woman is transformative. Like the love of a good person, I guess, at all is transformative. And so I'm glad he kind of turned it around. And well, if you've done some bad, maybe it is a bit of a redemption arc to use those same talents to be able to kind of do a little bit of good.
Exactly. So
that is fantastic.
That is my story. I mean, it wasn't super long, but I just kept laughing. I'm like, he's only done all of this and he's 17.
I know. My gosh. Like, that man lived a wilder life before 30 than most of us do in all of our born days.
I know. Just crazy.
Wow.
So that is my story.
That is fantastic.
Thanks.
Oh. And I have a little bit of a story of scoundrel for scoundrels and scandals for you. We're going to get to the scandal part this week. Ooh. And then, as I told you before we started recording, this isn't necessarily going to be a two-parter, but it is going to be kind of a companion story.
Okay.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about the social evils, and then there are a couple of characters that figure prominently in this story, but we are going to deep dive into them next week. Okay. So, Janet, let's talk about sex.
Let's talk about sex, baby.
Let's talk about and we're going to talk about sex work in particular.
Okay.
Did you know St. Louis was the very first American city to legalize it?
No, I did not.
All right. We are going all the way back to July 9th, 1870. The Social Evil Ordinance is passed in St. Louis, and it regulates and legalizes prostitution. So they're just like, look, this is going to happen no matter what. But if it's going to happen, then we are going to have to find a way to kind of to have some restrictions on it so that we can kind of keep it under control. It's built sort of after the Paris model.
Okay.
So in Paris they had legalized prostitution for forever, for a while, but they're going to try it out in the U.S. here in good old St. Louis.
Okay.
Now there are some regulations. Women, prostitutes, sex workers, like these ladies cannot solicit on the street. And included in that is they were like, hey, you can't be like waving your panties out of doorways and or like beckoning to somebody from an upper window, all of that. So you're not allowed to solicit from the street or like the entrances to the building. Workers all need to register with the city, and workers will all need to be treated monthly at what they call the Social Evil Hospital.
The Social Evil Hospital.
Right.
Oh my God.
I mean, these are all, in theory, like pretty good things, right? You're making sure that that these people that are doing sex work are getting tested regularly.
Right.
And that they are not, that they're not soliciting, like, poor random passersby.
Right.
And that we know who they are and where they are and when they are, like when they've been tested and all of that sort of thing. It's a little bit like kind of, did you ever watch The Wire?
No, but I know about it.
It's set up in Baltimore, and they basically are just like, we're never going to control the drugs in the city, so let's just give them a neighborhood and be like, look, as long as you don't leave this area, we're going to leave you alone.
Okay.
So here is the Social Evil Hospital.
Oh.
It's a big old brick building.
Wow,
And the only reason that I took a photo of it is because it was over on Arsenal.
Oh.
Right across from where the asylum was.
Really?
So, like, right across the street from the asylum, so that place is now Sublet Park.
Oh my gosh.
We're going to talk
Are you kidding?
I'm not
That is
kidding.
crazy.
I am not kidding. So they're now sublet parks. So this is where they send workers that like have STDs in order to be cured. And if they can't be cured, they also have what they have next door is the House of Industry. Where like, okay, if you are somebody you're looking to get out of sex work, then we can teach you some like domestic skills or some bookkeeping skills and get you into one of the other like 3 jobs that a woman could have in those days. Now, at the time, the mayor, his name was Joseph Brown, says, you could make prostitution illegal, but you can't make it unpopular.
Right.
So they have a vote, and the votes are 16-5 to just go ahead and legalize it.
Wow.
The Missouri Republic says at that point in time, these evils cannot be suppressed, and therefore wisest to everyone to regulate it within proper bounds. So we have the social evils.
Right. Yeah.
Act. So the powers that be are all for it. Mark Twain writes about it in his book, The Gilded Age, which is a great read. He says, the young fellows liked the house and liked the city. It seemed to them a mighty free and hospitable town. It was delightful. So Mark Twain writes about it. And meanwhile, Reverend William Greenleaf Eliot, he is the founding father of WashU.
Oh, okay.
He's also grandfather to T.S. Eliot.
Oh my God.
Who wrote Old Possum's Book of Magical Cats turned into the very bad musical Cats. I wonder how he would feel about the butthole, no butthole version. But he writes to his grandson T.S. and says, well, so far as visible present results go, it's working out satisfactorily to the public. And I bet it was. Meanwhile, the chief of police, James McDonough, and Mayor Brown, they invite police from all across the country to just come on down to the social evil district and check it all out for yourselves.
Oh my God.
8 months in.
Wow.
To this. 8 months in. I'm going to show you Almond Street, Poplar Street. There were a bunch of places in downtown that were like kind of in this district. I'm going to show you a cartoon of the lines outside the doors of the
my God. Yeah, they're just all kind of hanging on each other, just standing in the middle of the road almost.
It's blocks deep. It's like a new iPhone just dropped.
Yeah.
Right? So 8 months after regulation, we have almost 1,300 registered sex workers. We have 136 registered brothels. And we have 9 what they call houses of assignation.
Oh, wow.
Now, I had to look that up. What is the difference between a brothel and a house of assignation?
Yeah, I would need to know too.
So a brothel is a place that is specifically set up for sex work.
Ah.
A house of assignation would be something like a hotel or like a lodging house where there aren't necessarily full-time sex workers there, but you could like request one as like an add-on.
Oh, okay.
Whorebnb.
Whorebnb.
And then there are 243 of what they call single houses.
Oh.
And this is somebody that's just like working out of their home, like an individual person who there aren't multiple people working there. It's just like we are also doing sex work and we're registering so that we can be on the right side of this tenuous law. The 1870 census, like I said, there are 300,000 people listed in St. Louis as residents. Now, this might be a little bit inflated because this is kind of when Chicago starts to outpace us.
Oh, gotcha.
So it's possible that in 1870, St. Louis inflated their numbers to try and compete.
Yeah, no, I can see that.
But out of those 300,000 people, which might be a little closer to like 220-odd thousand people, 5,000 of them were actual licensed sex workers.
Wow.
In St. Louis. Now, this brings a ton of revenue to the city. We're going to get into this in my companion episode. But it also does cause some controversy. Like I said, they have the social evil hospital where all of these workers are supposed to go and like get tested once a month and like get their papers and make sure. And the hospital is in charge of the record keeping and the registration and also the exams. Now, for 5,000 sex workers, how many doctors do you think we would need at this hospital?
You would need, let's see here. It's not a very big hospital.
5,000.
But not all of them are going at the same time, right?
Not all of them are going at the same time, but they are all required to go at least monthly. And you have
25?
Well, Janet, do you remember the Soda Pop Festival episode?
Yes, always, forever, and ever. Amen.
5,000 sex workers and somebody like doctors that are doing the registration, the exam, the licensing. How many? Okay, so you think 25 is how many you think
that's
we
gracious.
Have. How many do you think we do actually have?
3.
6.
Okay.
It's better.
It's better.
It's better.
It's double the number that I gave you.
But they have to examine, charge these people, and then also keep the records. So this, as it turns out, does not work.
No.
By 1872, it is out of control. To try to still, but they're getting all these tax dollars, too. We'll talk a little bit more about that here in a moment. They are trying to get the revenue, but also keep the control over the city. Now, those single rooms, of which there were like 243, they are like, okay, now even if you have a single room, you're still going to have to pay the $10 a month licensing fee that the big brothels would have. So whether you are a madam of your own house with a whole bunch of girls working for you, or whether you're just like Sally Give It Up,
Sally Give It Up,
that is working out of your kitchen while the kids are at school, you still have to give $10 a month. So what ends up happening is these smaller houses and individual workers just start doing their business illegally like they were before.
Right.
1873, Reverend Eliot, founder of Washington University that was all for it a couple of years ago, is now really ready to shut this down. So is the police chief that had just invited all of his friends in for the weekend from across the country. Elliot goes to the city prosecutor, and he wants to arrest the top 2 madams in the city. The number 1 is a woman named Kate Clark, and we are going to talk about her more later, and then also a lot more next week.
Gotcha.
The police chief, meanwhile, McDonough, he has a scuffle, and it doesn't even have anything to do necessarily with a bawdy house, but his neighbor was one of the women that was registered as like a single house for a while, and then she took her registration off the market. He thinks that maybe there's still some hanky-panky going on over there, and one night she's just a little bit too loud for his liking. So he struts across the street, and even though she's not even a registered sex worker, she is a formerly registered sex worker, she's dragged out of the house and charged on drunk and disorderly. And he's like, no, you can't go home tonight. You're far too drunk to go home tonight. And she's like, the hell I am. But he takes her off to jail, and she's kept there overnight. It's a flex. The chief is then charged with malicious and willful arrest.
Oh, wow.
As well as unlawful denial of bail, because her husband, as she's being dragged out of the house, is like, on what grounds? How much do we need to pay? What's the money? I'll get it to you right now.
Wow.
They still keep her overnight, pretty much just to show that they can. So he's charged with malicious and willful arrest and unlawful denial of bail. He in court will be acquitted, but he is suspended from his job
Good.
as chief of police.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, he resigns pretty much immediately
Oh,
after.
wow.
Now, the feminist movement is also kind of aiming for nullification as well. In particular, there is a feminist activist named Anna Dickinson. She is a women's rights leader, and she leads a charge for a petition basically saying that, like, hey, nullification of sex work would be a good thing because what women in this city need, there are two reasons. Number one, women need more opportunities for jobs and for education. What they don't need is an easier way to sex work.
Right.
It's pretty easy to get into sex work. You know, like, nobody asks for your references.
Right.
And number two, she's like, why should all of these women have to register with the city when none of the promiscuous men that visit them have to be on any kind of registry?
Yep.
So 4,000 women sign for this petition. And by spring of 1874, they have what they need, which is a 2/3 majority to overturn the, the statute that allowed it in the first place, repeals the clause. So the state legislators, though, in advance of this, there are 16 state legislators that are brought up to St. Louis before the vote so that they could come and, quote, see the social evil law in operation. Now, the St. Louis Globe Democrat, which used to be a paper, I remember it.
Yes, I remember it.
They send out a reporter to spy on these legislators. And it seems as though almost all of them spend the night at Madam Kate Clark's house. Again, more on her later. But the paper says the next day, well, at least they'll wake up in the morning with practical experience of the workings of the social evil system. So I guess you could say that they went out with a bang.
Oh my God.
The vote is held in March of 1874 and legal prostitution is repealed. Now, it still isn't outlawed, it's just no longer sanctioned. Some of these sex workers are happy about it. No more taxes.
Right.
No more registration, no more monthly required doctor's visits, and most importantly, remember how I said you couldn't solicit?
Right.
By, like, waving out
Now
your
they
window
can.
or putting on a red... Roxanne had to keep her red light off.
Right.
Right? Well, that's gone too now because it's just no longer sanctioned. The rules are null and void. So one feisty lady stood out on the day of repeal of, like, that in front of the courthouse downtown, right at 4th and Market, the old St. Louis courthouse.
Yep.
And I'm going to read you this quote the way it was written in the paper because this is just too good. She threw off her shawl and exposed her bosom to the gaze of all that met her. The repeal is done. She is tits out in the middle of downtown St. Louis. Like, all right. Fresh fish. Flowers for sale.
Right.
So again, by 1879, there is now a full ban on sex work again, and the social evil experiment is over. But Janet...
Yes, Tracy.
Janet.
Tracy.
It's been a minute since we've done one of these. Janet. Tracy. Do you remember about the Social Evil Hospital?
Yes.
It rebrands as the St. Louis Female Hospital. And it treats all women, specifically poor women, not just sex workers. So now this is a hospital like for anybody.
Wow.
Pregnant ladies, women that just have, TB or whatever is going around. But it treats all poor women. And it lasts for quite a while, and then they finally tear it down. The building is razed to the ground in 1915. And any patients that were currently in residence will be transferred to City Hospital downtown.
Wow.
But before that happens,
on
June 3rd, 1906, there is a woman named Carrie McDonald, and she is a washerwoman, like a domestic servant,
right,
a laundress. And she comes in, she's poor, she's pregnant. She will have her baby daughter there at the Social Evil Hospital, and that baby will be named Frida Josephine, and that baby will grow up to be another infamous, alluring woman from St. Louis that you will know better as Josephine Baker.
What? I knew she was from here, but oh my God.
She was born at the Social Evil Hospital while it was the Social Evil Hospital.
That fills in a lot of blanks.
I know. So that is the buttonhole on part one. Well, not part one. I won't call it part one because we're going to talk a little. It's my sister's story. My companion. Right. They're sisters, not twins. There are other notable, notorious women in this story, but you are going to have to turn in next week to hear about them.
Yes.
And there we are. That is my story for the week.
Yay! I love it.
And I think now is where we take a break.
Yeah, I think this is where we take a break.
Now is where I'm going to take Janet out back and show her where all the naughty women reside. And she's going to tell me she's a pilot, and I'm going to believe her. And then we'll be back in just a moment with What's Nice.
We'll be back with What's Nice. If you enjoy getting muddy with us, here are some ways you can help support the podcast. If you have any suggestions, please email us at bigmuddymayhem@gmail.com. Like and subscribe to the podcast on the platform where you're listening, and of course, a good review will help us reach new listeners. If you're listening on YouTube, leave a comment in the comments section. Make sure to join our Facebook group where we can discuss the episodes and hear your suggestions. And as a reminder, Tracey and I would both like to remind you that if you have any stories about yourself that you would love to share about your family or
stories of your own, we would love to have a listener story episode. So please send those to bigmuddymayhem@gmail.com. We really do read and listen and love your suggestions, and we really do. My story this week was from listener Megan. Hi, Megan.
Hi, Megan. So just make sure to send us your suggestions.
That's right.
And of course, tell your friends, your family, your neighbors, your dogs, your cats, your congressman,
the person behind you at the grocery store.
Exactly.
Yes, tell everyone. Listen to Big Muddy Mayhem.
And now we'll be back with What's Nice. Welcome back.
Welcome back.
And now it's time to do What's Nice.
Yes, and so Janet, do you have something nice to share with us?
I do. So, again, I kind of cheated a little and went Baton Rouge close enough.
Okay.
Again, our podcast, we do what we want. So, I know Tracey will like this because, and probably Megan too. Baton Rouge, let's talk about the Baton Rouge Zoo.
Oh, yes. You know that I am, I understand that zoos are, like, controversial, but I do sort of see them as a necessary evil that is, like, so important for conservation and so important for education as well.
Absolutely. So, this is the Baton Rouge Zoo. They have all sorts of animals. We have a list of animals here. We have birds. We have bison. We have There's a cow. Look
Oh
at the cow.
my goodness! I saw a hippo on the splash page that you pulled up, and
Yeah.
all of the big cats.
Bobcat, fish. They have all sorts of things. It looks like a
Nice.
very cute zoo. It looks like their hours were 9 to 5.
JC, if you're listening and you've been to the Baton Rouge Zoo, I know that you leave some comments on our YouTube page. Please let us know if you've been and if you like it.
They are open every day except New Year's Day, Thanksgiving, Christmas Eve, and Christmas Day.
When the animals are all drunk.
Exactly. Adults and teens are $10 plus tax. Seniors $8.50 plus tax. Children between the ages of 2 and 12 are $7 plus tax. Under age 1 and under, it's free. Wednesday afternoon, apparently they have a discount. If you show up anywhere between 2 and 4, it's only $3 to get in. They, of course, have a train because, zoos need those little train zoos. The trains that go around the zoo.
Now, I have heard that if you bring 4 or more children, you can get your whole party in for free if you agree to throw one into an enclosure of the zookeeper's choice.
The train is $3 plus tax for anybody who is 2 and older.
Okay.
Activities there, they have giraffe chat at like 10:30 a.m. They have otter chat at the otter pond at 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. They have a black rhino chat at 2:30, and they have running of the ducks at the kids zoo 1 hour before the zoo closes. So I assume they get to run with the ducks.
Running of the ducks sounds like my worst nightmare. You know, I've told you that story. I think I might have even mentioned it on the podcast before about how I was like carrying a little box of Captain Crunch when I was like 3 down at Hot Springs, Arkansas.
Oh.
And I was just walking around out on the front lawn in front of like the condo where we were staying, and there were all of these baby ducks and they wanted my cereal. And that is the reason I'm scared of birds.
Oh no!
I did not want to be mauled by the baby ducks, but I also did not want to drop my Captain Crunch.
No!
And they grabbed my pigtails and my little sundress.
Oh
Janet, I was traumatized. This is why I still don't like birds. I'm going to be 50. I still don't like birds.
Oh.
All right, anywho. So running of the ducks is not for me, but otherwise.
This place is actually located on Highway 19 in Baker, Louisiana, which is just outside of Baton Rouge. Apparently, you take the first exit to enter the zoo at 3000 Zoo Circle.
Okay.
Enter through Greenwood Park, and that is really it. I mean,
That's
it looks like a fun
fantastic.
zoo. It's it has all the zoo things.
I do like a zoo. Like I
Yeah.
said, I understand that they can be controversial. I do believe that they are very, very much important in, giving young folks education.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
About all of the different
Not
wonderful animals in the world, and then also in conservation of the species.
absolutely.
So that sounds fantastic.
That's
And
my what's nice.
if I find myself down towards Baton Rouge, then that is something that I will definitely want to check out.
Absolutely.
All right. And I have a very short what's nice as well.
Okay.
Now, we talked about the social evil hospital that then
Right.
became the St. Louis Female Hospital.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned, it was raised like down to the ground in 1915. And so people probably don't realize when they're there the history of the space that is now Sublet Park. Now, Sublet Park, the only thing, and I was almost not going to do this because I was like, oh man, there's so much of this like women's history here.
Right.
And it's named for a couple of men.
Of course.
So it was originally when they first built it, they called it Manchester Park. They finally gave it its final name in 1925, so just 10 years after it was torn down. And it was named for William L. and Solomon Sublet.
Okay.
Now, they were both Western fur traders that settled here, and I believe they settled over on, like, Gratiot Street. Is it Gratiot?
Oh, yeah.
Gratiot?
Right.
Is that, am I...
Gratiot.
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 All right. But yeah, they settled over there. The street is still on the maps.
Oh, wow.
Sublet, like over where the park is. So they settled on Gratiot. But the park, Sublet Street, is still on the maps dating all the way back to the 1850s.
Wow.
They have fields for soccer, softball, tennis. They have a nice little playground. But Janet, what I like best about Sublet Park, and I don't know if Amy listens or
Hello,
Jim,
Amy.
but hello, Amy and Jim.
Hello, Jim.
They also have, for my money,
The best fireworks.
and when I say for my money, I mean no money, because it is a free fireworks exhibit. But they have lovely, lovely fireworks exhibits for 4th of July every year. It's free. It is a neighborhood community event.
Absolutely.
I went for the first time last year.
Oh, okay.
Because we had storms on 4th of July.
Yes, we did.
So they pushed it back, and they did it at the end of summer. So it was like a little last hurrah of fireworks. They will let you bring in your lawn chairs, your coolers, your picnics, all of that sort of stuff. And everyone is welcome. Everything is welcome. You just kind of gather. And because it's this little triangle-shaped park that is pretty much flat.
Right, exactly.
There aren't a lot of trees like Tower Grove or Forest Park. There aren't a whole lot of like green spaces. It's just like big, wide open spaces for sports that require green, flat ground. You know, kind of like when you tear down a hospital and you've got that footprint to fill in.
Right.
But that also means that no matter where you set up on the perimeter of the park, when they set off the fireworks, you have a nice, good, unobstructed view.
Awesome.
So I really love Sublet Park as a place to go and watch fireworks on the 4th of July.
It was at least 5 or 6 years ago, I did that same park with Jim.
Yeah,
as well.
I was going to say, it is really lovely.
It is.
And in the meantime, it is also a really nice kind of centrally located park for people to go and play their soccer or their softball or go play with your kids on the playground.
Yeah.
So short and sweet and not very photogenic, so I didn't take any pictures. But Sublet Park is an asset to the city, and that is my What's Nice.
Yay!
All right. Well, here we are again. We've had a couple of good stories.
We did.
I cannot wait to tell you.
I can't wait to hear it.
About the notorious figures.
Oh my God, Josephine Baker.
Oh.
Love her.
Well, she's not going to feature, but
I know, but still.
Yeah, Josephine Baker being born
there
in a hospital that was known for women of ill repute.
That is crazy.
That tracks.
That tracks.
Right. And I'm going to talk about a couple of the movers and the shakers that moved it and shook it.
Okay. I can't wait to hear.
In St. Louis's red light district, the very first city in the nation to legalize prostitution.
Crazy.
We're going to talk a little bit about more of that next week, and I know you'll have a story from me.
Yes, I will.
And this is our Mr. Rogers time where we put our shoes on.
Right.
And hang up our sweaters. And just like Mr. Rogers, there is one more thing that has to do with kindness.
Is it something about staying Midwest nice?
It is that reminding you all, the world is a tough, tough place these days. But what we can do in these times is we can and will and should stay Midwest nice.
Stay Midwest nice.